Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. Our next guest is one of the great satirists, and you can see him right now on stage at Joe's Pub here in New York City, and you can listen to him on his podcast, ReMade In America with Bassem Youssef. Please welcome Bassem Youssef. Let's hear it.
Hi, guys.
Hey. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
You know, last time I interviewed you, I think it was in 2015. It was before, the day. The November 8th of 2016.
Yes.
And we talked a lot about living in a dictatorship and what those dictators can be like. I'm not calling Donald Trump a dictator as of right now. Clearly, he likes them. He has an affinity for them. You told this great story that I loved about, and I can't remember which president of Egypt it was at the time that you were referring to, said that they had the cure for AIDS.
Oh, yeah.
Who was that again?
Sisi.
It was El-Sisi. It was the current.
It's the military, basically, before he came to power. And this is something recurring in many of the authoritarian regimes and the dictatorships around the world. It happened in Gambia, 2008. It happens in North Korea basically every weekend. They discover a cure for AIDS.
I have your food, but I'm holding on to it. Yeah.
Yes, and the whole idea of like this is part of propaganda. Always the idea of like we're doing something, we're achieving. The same way where Donald Trump said, like, I'm magnificent, I'm doing great, I created jobs. So there's with outrageous dictatorships, you need outrageous achievements.
Well, what made me think of this just before coming here, sitting down and interviewing you, was the clip that I saw of him today being asked whether or not he thinks Russia is still meddling in our elections, and
he said, I misspoke.
Well, no, that was the thing that he said before that. He said, I misspoke, would or wouldn't, and then they asked him, well, do you think Russia is still meddling? And he said no, and now they're walking back that. But one thing that he did said is no president has ever been tougher on Russia. No president has ever been stronger with Russia, and the economy is great. And I was just immediately made me think this story that you told.
The whole idea about Trump, like nobody loves women like I do. Nobody loves black people like I do. This is Trump. No, nobody went to space like I did. It's just like Trump has this. I don't know if it's a delusion or he just like he knows like he's full of it. But maybe he's have this way of presenting himself like I'm the best. I'm the greatest. I'm the thing. You know, I create a cure for AIDS in my spare time. So if he come to Egypt or if he come to North Korea, he's just gonna be like fitting like a glove.
So what's it been like for you to watch Trump first ascend to the presidency and then be president the last year and a half?
It's a mixture of amusement and being horrified.
Oh, so you're like the rest of us. You're with the rest of us on that.
Yeah, but like what the techniques that he's using are very familiar. The idea of putting down the press, calling anybody who speaks against him fake news, and but the one thing that really bothered me about this whole thing, I mean, of course, there's a lot of things happening every day, and I know that this will sound trivial, but I think it's representative of a much bigger thing, much bigger issue. It's when he, for the second year in a row, said, "I'm not going to go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner," and this is, this is a symbol. This is a huge symbol here. It's like no matter how big of a man or you are or big of a president you are, or like you come here and you submit to the people and it's okay for people to make fun of you. So when he comes and says like I'm not gonna go, this is an American tradition in the past few decades that a lot of the whole world, by the way, watches the White House correspondent. I don't know how, you don't understand how much of an impact this is. People still watch and replay the Stephen Colbert speech in front of George W. Bush.
Which is a huge controversy. People often don't talk about that George Bush, his administration got really upset with the Correspondents Association.
But they were not vocal about it. They didn't have people coming out of the media saying this is... he did not boycott the dinner the next year. He brought in someone who kind of like impersonated him. But
he brought in a very light comedian.
Yeah. But the idea itself, the fact is like, I'm not going to go. You can make fun of yourself. I'm not going to go. This for me, this is a guy who doesn't understand what does it mean to be a public servant. Yeah. This is the whole idea. I mean, you can talk all day about what is the most common thing between Donald Trump and dictators. the most common thing is that they don't see themselves as public servants. They don't see themselves as people submitting to the people who voted for them. That's
Who
a
they
big,
see themselves as?
no, they see them as leaders, as pampered, as the guy who's a reality show star, and he started on a very humble beginning by taking $1 million of his dad. Right. The guy, like, you know, he didn't struggle. He didn't have actually to answer to anybody. So for him, this is all new for him.
When it comes to calling the press fake news and all of the things that are similar between what Trump does and what other dictators across the world do, how much of that is just about who they are personally, or about sort of discrediting all these institutions?
It's 100% discrediting.
So it's conscious. It's a very conscious,
it's a very conscious
clear
decision
plan.
of making those people, of planting seeds of doubt. Because here's the thing, because I've seen that also in the Middle East. For example, when you speak to people who are supporters of the military or dictatorships in the Middle East, and you tell them, and they come with a bunch of like really crazy news with devoid of facts, devoid of truth, and tell them, no, look what CNN said, look what BBC said. It's like, no. All of these people are conspiring against us. This is like a whole, the West is conspiring. So that's the end of a conversation. Because now this is not a conversation that involves facts, that involves truth. It involves ideology and what do you feel about it. So from day one, if you speak to his supporters and say, like, you know, what do you think of what he said? Oh, you saw that on CNBC, MSNBC, you saw that on CNN. This is fake news. It never happened. And if it did, it must have an explanation, but they're not telling us.
MSNBC, more like the Democrats network or something.
Yeah, or even CNN, or even BBC, or the whole world. Anybody who speaks about him in a way that is not acceptable, it really has to be discredited, because if they don't, they have to face the fact that this is something wrong with this administration. There's something wrong with this president, and they're not willing to do that because their whole ideology, their whole belief system is built on that.
How much of that do you think is a result of the Iraq War? I know it's a big question, I'm sorry, but when we talk about discrediting the press, specifically Western press, and we talk about ideology over free press, I always look back to the use of the press as mainstream press, unfortunately, as useful idiots during the lead up to the Iraq War and their close association to power.
But that was a different different thing. At that time, the press kind of like went with the direction of the Bush administration,
yes.
and they propagated the news that the government fed them. Yeah, but that is different because now you're having an authority press conflict.
Oh, I agree. Right now is totally different. I just mean because of that, the seeds of doubt have been sown, and you can exploit that.
I think the seeds of doubt are been sown for so many reasons. Part of it is like a lot of people are disenfranchised. They think that they blame their economical problems on the elite, and the elite are the people who are from the media, from Hollywood, from the press. So they're not like us. So they do not believe in God like we do. They do not think of America like we do. So they have to be different from us. That's why I don't have to believe them.
And oftentimes the people assailing the elite are people that work for the administration and have like $5 million lobbying contracts.
Yeah, but these are like God-loving elites, so that's fine.
Well, let's talk about your podcast. This is a lot of what you do on the podcast, conversations like this. What made you want to start a podcast, and who were the people that you wanted to interview?
So the podcast is called ReMade In America, and it's not, I know that a lot of people have pushed me into trying to make this about immigrant experience, but I didn't want to do that. I actually wanted to make it about people who feel that they are like out of place somehow. So as someone who has actually people who had to fight against the tide. So you can have a Persian comedian like Jamaz Jibrani, or Baratondi Thurston, a great African-American comedian, or Carmen Esposito, an LGBTQ female comedian. All of these stories, they actually come based on the human struggle of finding yourself in a place where you don't belong, and you fight against it until you prevail. Because I think like most successful people had to actually to struggle with this, and had to fight against a lot of odds, whether these odds are social, religious, political, in order to prevail. So, and this is why I'm very inspired by these stories, because back home I had the same problem. I had to struggle against a lot of things that were against me, and I really relate to these stories. So it could be a black man born in Mississippi, or a white man born in the middle of America, and they feel they don't belong, or an immigrant who came from another country and came here and made it. This is why these stories, I find, is very inspiring and very, very inspiring and interesting.
And some of the stuff that you struggled with on your own at home, where you were a doctor who kind of who wanted to become a comedian, who wanted to become a political satirist.
I didn't
right?
really want to be a satirist. I
didn't?
No, I was actually on my way here in America. I was accepted into a fellowship here, in pediatric heart surgery fellowship. And then the revolution happened, and I started to do these YouTube videos. I didn't even think too much about it. I was just satirizing what was happening in the state-run media, where they were brainwashing the masses. And I didn't, and just it exploded, and like millions of people watched it, and suddenly I was offered to actually host a show. I said, all right, I'm going to host a show for a year, and then I'm going to continue my career as a doctor. And then 1 year after the other, and I just left medicine behind.
What does that feel like, to have left medicine behind?
Great.
Really?
Amazing, yes. Yeah, I don't miss the hours.
That's true. Who has been the most fascinating person that you've interviewed so far?
Oh, most interesting, not fascinating, is Jordan Peterson, because he has a totally different point of view than mine, and we were able to talk for a whole hour in a very respectful way, and I was able to dig deeper into his ideologies, because the problem with Jordan, not his problem, but a lot of people who interview him, they want to pigeonhole him, and they want to have this as a more of confrontational, problematic interview. And I wanted this to be a very logical, objective interview, that I can actually call him out on some of the stuff that I don't like, and we can respectfully disagree together. So I think that was a very interesting interview for me.
And that's one of the few interviews that you kind of went into, I wouldn't say with less of an interest. I mean, you're interested in him, but I think a lot of the interviews that you do are the stories of the other person, where they came from, how they became who they are. There's a little bit of that with the Jordan one, but mostly it's about sort of diving into his ideology and
his very controversial ideology for a lot of people. So that's why I got very interested into discussing them with him, because I think that we can all discuss and deconstruct other people's ideas in a way that is very objective, instead of just like go to the much easier route, which is name calling and being aggressive.
Did you find that that Peterson responded well to your criticisms?
He was very generous with his time. He was very generous with his responses, and I think what he found is like someone who respects, who's like handling the interview with the respect and the research that him being an academic that he could appreciate. So I think the result was great.
Now he is a part of a group of people who've been coined the intellectual dark web, I believe, by a New York Times writer. It's him. It's like a couple comedians, and I've always found with them is that they are very quick to call any kind of not left-wing thought, but any kind of quote-unquote identity politics, or anybody sort of advocating for the voiceless based off of gender, based off of race, to be sort of advocating for some kind of authoritarianism that isn't necessarily there, while they themselves seem to, either without knowing it or advertently doing it, are advocating for a kind of thought authoritarianism at times.
Well, but like, you have to understand where it comes from, because at a certain point, the PC culture has evolved to become a little bit maybe suffocating for a lot of people. There's a lot of comedians now who will not perform in colleges, and as much as like a lot of people are happy with it, there's a lot of people who are pretty much upset of this. So they feed on this. So like, you know what, you cannot like censor me, and I'm gonna say what I want. I'm gonna say it louder, and I'm gonna say it in a way that offends you. And if you don't like it, that's freedom of speech.
Right, but then as soon as you criticize them or talk back to them, they say you are being authoritarian. You are not allowing me to talk. And it's like, no, you were allowed to talk. We're allowed to tell you to shut the fuck up, though. Like that's kind of that's free speech.
Yeah, but again, it really depends on like how you handle the conversation. So, for example, they would come and say, you cannot disinvite anybody from any campus, no matter how bad his speech is. And a lot of the PC people, no, we should not. We should prevent the propagation of these kind of ideas. So it's like no, and they will tell you, but the solution for bad speech is more speech, and they have a point in that. So the thing is, can we handle? Can both sides handle bad speech relatively to them, of course, but my problem with their narrative is not as much as like how much or how little you can speak, is about how they can take something out of context.
Yes. Which I think they do with speech.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, and they spread certain ideas that are not there, that were not meant to be used, to be meant by this kind of a certain topic. So, for example, me and Jordan Peterson talked about white privilege, and he started to he used this example from the Russian kulaks, where the Ukrainian famine happened because the people were called privileged and their lands were taken away from them. So he says, he uses this example in a way to, and I told him, if I'm a white person and I listen to you, I will think that the leftists are coming with, torches and pitchforks and coming to take my money. But that is like a historical event that you've taken out of context, because at that time, it is the rich farmers, the privileged farmers, were organizing some sort of a coup against Stalin. So he retaliated against them, took their lands, and basically killed them. So this is a totally different political narrative than if we talk about white privilege in the sense of police brutality over incarceration.
He's just using the words that were maybe used there.
That was used by Stalin, but you cannot just you have to look at the context. So he said, like, well, my audience are smart and they know how to differentiate. I was like, well, the people who also listen to the word white privilege are smart and they know how to differentiate.
You're also smart too, Jordan Peterson, and you're doing this intentionally. That's the problem, is that they're bad faith arguments that they're never willing to come forward and say, oh yeah, maybe that is misleading. It's because it's misleading for a reason. They're looking to create these kind of arguments.
And we have to admit that there's a lot of people on both sides of the aisles do that. But of course, because we're more sensitive of what happened on the right wing, we're going to call them out. And we have people from that side of the aisle who do that too. But yeah, I agree with you. These are like bad faith arguments.
Yeah, I would only say in defense of the people on the left wing, because I'm such a sensitive PC left winger. In defense of those on the left wing who sometimes have bad faith arguments or misleading arguments, I would say it is for the greater good of helping others and establishing civil rights and unity amongst, male, female, trans male, trans female.
And world peace.
What's that?
And world peace.
Yeah. I think when the bad faith arguments presented on the right, even those who would say that they're not right wing, like Jordan Peterson, does he say that he's not right wing?
No, actually, he calls himself liberal. He calls himself liberal, and
bullshit right there.
I mean, if he can call himself whatever he calls himself, but it just I think the way that we speak to intellectuals on that side of the argument, as I said, the mistake that was done repeatedly was trying to tag them or stigmatize them with some identity. You're racist, you're misogynist, and that's not constructive. Just speak about the ideas, don't speak about the human, don't speak about the person.
I would also say, if anybody is watching this that is a Jordan Peterson fan and you cut this and you put it on YouTube and you want him to argue with me, he would destroy me. He's much more intellectual. He's better at speaking than me. He would destroy me.
You have to have more faith in yourself.
I do, but I can see the clip already, like Jordan. Because one time I searched him and I watched one video, and then for weeks YouTube would recommend videos of his to me that would be like, Jordan Peterson destroys feminist on BBC, and all the way down, and I just don't want to ever be one of those people that he destroys.
You could be more famous even. Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, like being famous and being infamous.
Let's talk about your show at Joe's Pub.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
I have a comedy residency here until the 2nd of August. You should all come.
Yes.
Oh, they were alive, and
I thought I trained them better than that.
It's oh, come on. Okay, don't take any shit from this guy. So I'm here. Were we allowed to say shit?
Yeah, I've said it multiple times.
Oh shit. Okay. All right. So I'm here. I have 13 shows. 4 of them are already over. I have 9 more, And it's kind of a comedy residency. So, as you know, people go to Joe's Pub, they performers, comedians, artists, musicians, and they try to work on the material. So it's kind of it's a work in progress. And a lot of people come and they kind of enjoy this progress, so they see what works and what doesn't. So some parts is going to be nice, some parts are not going to be that nice. So don't judge. Don't judge, okay? So you can come, and I hope you can get a ticket and come and support me. We need more white people there.
What kind of material are you working on?
Well, political. It's all political. It's basically it's my journey from the Middle East coming here in America in these times, and there's a lot of comparison between what I've seen in the Middle East and what I've seen here. And I make fun of everything. I make fun of myself and my identities, all different identities, and what happens in the Middle East, what happens in America, and it's fun. People have fun there.
Let's get some questions from audience. Who's the question? Right here.
Hi. I was wondering, in these crazy times that we live in today, how do you keep yourself motivated through your podcast and through your comedy?
Well, the thing is, for the podcast, there is like a lot of amazing stories that our struggle can sound very minimal or very trivial next to them. There are people who they started with nothing. And they have achieved amazing things in their life. So their stories keep me motivated. In comedy, just watch the news, man. There's a lot of motivation there. Yeah, just watch the whatever coming out from the White House or Fox News.
Do you watch Fox News every now and then?
No, I can't.
Really, I click over to it. I like to go. What are they talking? Oh my God. And then I click back to whatever I was watching.
No, my therapist told me not to.
Good therapist.
Yeah.
Last question, right here.
Hi. Do you think it's more effective to satirize the content of news, the policies and the politics of news day to day, or to satirize the media itself as a function?
Well, it depends. If you have a daily show, you will do it day to day. If you have it's really different on the context, the construct, the kind of product that you are doing. So, for example, if you're having a weekly show, a 1 hour special, it will be different from a current news show that will happen every day. So it would really happen of what kind of input you're gonna have. It's the more frequent of an input you're gonna have, the more current your satire or comedy will be. The more outspace that's why, for example, you have the Daily Show with Trevor Noah. What happens every day? You have John Oliver. They talk about big ideas. So it really depends on like the frequency of the show.
What do you think about satire's ability right now? Do you think it actually? This is my fear, as someone who's always loved satire, is that satire no longer is speaking truth to power, but is making the power more palpable.
Satire has never had any role other than what it's doing right now. I think we're just putting too much weight on satirists and comedians and comedy shows. Comedy shows are not meant to be news. Comedy shows are not meant to be tools to change regimes. Comedy shows are meant to bring people together in a different way, different light, to watch what is something that is more important and a little bit dull, but they do it in a funny, more acceptable way to consume. What happens after is really up to the people. So if you watch every single comedy show, every single satirical show every night, and it comes the time to vote, and you don't, that's not on comedy, that's on you. Yeah. You know, if you go into every single women's march and put the pussy hats, and if you don't go to vote, it's on you, not the march. Same thing happened with Los Angeles. We had like 750,000 people coming down to the streets, and a few weeks after there was elections, and 12% showed up.
Right. Well, those were mayoral elections or
I don't know, something like last year, and I don't know, because there's no glory and there's no signs, funny signs that people are going to take a picture and put it on Facebook and Instagram it, because there's no glory in voting. But the glory is always in the laughter and doing the parades. But really, the actual job happens in the voting booth, not there.
There's so much glory in voting. I get a little sticker on my chest. I take a picture of that.
It's not as big as the sign.
That is true. It's not as big as the sign. It's not as cheeky as the sign, as you said. Well, Bassem, it's so good to see you. Thank you for coming back. Congratulations on the podcast. It's called ReMade in America. You can find it on iTunes, right? That's where people can find that. And people can see you at Joe's Pub right around the corner here in New York City for the next couple weeks, I
Yes,
believe.
until the 2nd of August.
Until the 2nd of August. Everybody, please put your hands together for Bassem Youssef. Let's hear it.